Today, I'm going to show you how to use the Find One Record action for Dynamics 365 Business Central and Copilot Studio. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of OnlyCopilotFans tutorials. Today's episode was inspired by a request that came to me from a friend of mine, somebody who's been using Business Central for a long time and presumably has done some work with Power Automate or Power Apps. As most of you probably know, the Power Platform tools or the Power Platform connectors are largely what also power many of the connections that we make within our Copilot Studio agents. So while Power Automate may seem very straightforward, sometimes the constructs and the environment within which Copilot Studio, the environment of Copilot Studio, can trip people up when they're using even connectors or actions that they've used before with other Power Platform tools. So I'm going to simplify this process for you. And I will also have a second and a third video where I'll show you some advanced techniques for using the Find One Record connector. I have more elegant ways that you can make use of these tools so that your users get a much better experience. Today's video is going to focus on the core necessary things you need to be able to work with this. Also, if you're curious about when or why you should use Find One Record versus the Find Records versus Get Record, all of those being part of the Business Central connector set or actions that come under the Business Central connector for Power Platform. In a separate YouTube video, we will also address that. So without further ado, let's jump straight into our steps. In Copilot Studio, I'm already logged into or already have opened up one of my agents here, and I am going to use the topics construct. Topics look like flows. They're not flows. You actually still have our agent flows, or anybody who's using Copilot Studio knows that. But topics allow us to do a few things that we need to in a deterministic manner, but then also do some other very cool things that you'll see when we do advanced technique videos. So let's start up over here. One of the core things about a topic is telling it or telling your agent when to trigger that topic. So we're going to create a topic and from blank, and the description would be this topic is triggered when a user asks for details on a vendor record. You can say a specific vendor record. Let's give this a name. Find One Record vendor. Let's make it easy for me to find this later. So the next thing that I want to do in this simple scenario is assume the user has not already provided the vendor number. So you will want to capture that. So we're going to ask a question. Oops, misclicked over there. And ask a question. What is the vendor number? And the entity we will choose for this is user's entire response. And we will save the user's response as a variable called the vend number. Now the next thing we'll want to do is to invoke our Find One Record tool. So when you are invoking a tool or you want to use a connector, you have two ways of going about it. You can either build that tool separately under the Tools menu and then invoke that from the topic, and you provide it some input variables, and you may use the output variables for certain things as well. That's helpful if you want to use the tool for other things within the agent. If you're only going to use that tool for the specific use case within this topic, then you don't have to build that out separately as a tool. You could simply come here and say add a tool, connector, and choose Business Central Find One Record. The beauty of this is that it is going to build this right into my topic. It's not going to live outside of it, and all the definitions that I need to make will be defined right over here. So here I can come to any properties that I want to identify for, here are the inputs or whatever else I want to. I can look under here, and my inputs will be my sandbox environment, the company, the API category. I have a library of APIs that I've created because I don't always like what I get with the Microsoft APIs, version 2.0 APIs, so I've built my own. If you're interested in playing around with them, these are not meant for production use, but for your exercises or for testing, if you're interested in them, you could always go to my GitHub repository under github.com/AJAnsari. I'll put the specific link to this repository on the screen below right here, or the bottom of the screen, and also in our description for the video. But for now, let's go into my table name, which is the table or where I'm going to get this data from. So now I know it's coming from the Cronus company in Sandbox, and it'll connect to this API page I have. And then there are some advanced parameters. The specific parameter that you're looking for over here, which will help you narrow down to a record, is our filter table. This is what is going to drive that search, if you will, to the specific record you're looking for. Keep in mind, if your search resulted in more than one match, it would look at the first match and show you that information. If you've done anything else with find records and you try to use the same way of filtering as you do on find records, you're going to get tripped up. Find records expects a no data filter query, which is working with a string type of a variable, but this is expecting a table. So this has to be handled a little bit differently. So for anybody who is not familiar with how that works, I have put a small example. Actually, we're going to use that. Here's in Visual Studio Code or text editor. You can see this is what that structure is going to look like. It's defining a table, telling that we have three columns or keys, as it were, that are part of it: a filter field, a filter operator, and a filter value. The filter field is the number, and this is what the field is called in Business Central, NO, or through the APIs, that's what it's called. The name is name, etc. If you want a full list of all the values, you can go back and check using Postman or another method. You'd be able to see all the different fields that are available. But I have already, by this point, memorized most of them, right? So I know that I use number or name, etc. And the operator is equals, and the filter value, if I were hard coding that, I would put that in double quotes. If I'm not hard coding it, then I would use a variable. So the variable that I will populate under filter value would be this vendor number variable, or VENNO. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll come back into this filter area, and we will look for the formula tab after we use the ellipses. This takes us to the PowerFX editor. Now here I can start typing in my table within parentheses, then a curly bracket, and the first part was my filter field, and we said the value here we're going to use as a number. Then we are going to have the filter operator, and so we're saying filter, the number field must equal, and the third value being filter value, and this will be the VEN number. Now, when you're referencing, if you're not familiar with this already, you have to say topic dot or global, depending on where it's coming from. So topic dot vendor number. So that's going to be this particular field. And now let's just close this out. This should be our fully populated expression. So now we have this information. The output of the find one record will not just be one value that's a string. It is, of course, going to be a record. But for purposes of display or using in another step, we can kind of further look into within it. Each of these different fields are going to exist as a get first item v3 dot number or dot no dot name, etc. One thing to keep in mind, if you were filtering not on number but name, for instance, you are going to have to remember to be case sensitive in your searches. In my example 2 and 3, which are going to come in future videos, I will specifically give you some examples on how you can help your user along, making sure that they are searching with the right case sensitivity and what have you. So let's take a look at this. Now, what I want to do next is add a message that can display some information from what we've just uncovered. The vendor you are looking for is, then a little bold, and let's get the variable. So you notice get first item v3, and then I can look for the name. So this is going to be that. And now I can provide some details. And here I could use bullet point list, or I could just type in some information one by one. And I'll include a couple more things. So I could say vendor number, and I will use my HTML, kind of use simple HTML character code like break for a line, and so on and so forth. I could also use href references for links and so on. Let's do a number. Let's do a balanced view. And let's do another line break here. And let's do a city. And finally, country. Now, in each of these instances, I must populate the variables that are needed. So right after this number field, I could come to the variable here, and here's where the number is going to go. And for balanced view, I can select my balanced view. For city, I can select my city. And for the country, and that is my answer. And I then want to be done with this topic. Since we've answered the question, we can close this loop out and we say end current topic. Let's go ahead and save this topic and let's test this out. Let's bring up our test sidecar, refresh our session, and I want details on a vendor. This should now bring up the what is the vendor number question. You can see under the hood that it is using the new topic we created. So we could type in the vendor number. Here I can authenticate myself. If I'd use Maker authentication, I would not have to do anything with that. But here you can see the vendor you're looking for is First Step Consultants, details, number 2000, balanced view. Now, if I don't like the line break, so I can quickly go and make a couple of little changes so that the message looks a little better formatted. But essentially, at this point, we have done exactly what we set out to do. So let's just quickly select bold here. And let's also remember to add a little line break here. This ought to do the trick. And if you haven't figured it out with Copilot Studio, if you put in 2 line breaks, it will definitely leave a proper 1 line break. But if not, you'll have to use the line break character. So let's do a quick refresh session. Find a vendor with details. Notice how I keep asking a lot of different ways to see how it'll answer. There you go. This information is shown. If I want to confirm within Business Central, I could always go to businesscentral.dynamics.com. I should point out that in the second or the third video that I'll be showing with some advanced techniques of doing things more elegantly, I will show you how you can actually embed a link to that vendor record in Business Central with the answer. And that way, you are not going to have to go into Business Central to validate or verify what you're looking at. So here in Business Central, if I look at the vendor list here, I've got my First Step Consultants. Oh, I was looking for 10,000 the second time around. So I've got Fabricam, and under Fabricam, I should be able to see that the balance due is $2,071.13, which is what we're seeing. So we were looking at the correct information. So that is how you can use the find one record. It's very simple. It allows you to find one specific record. And again, if you search on something that will get more than one result, perhaps you're searching for the name field with some wildcards, you may get more than one result, but it will show you the first one that it finds. If you want to get all the multiple ones, then you will need to use find records. In the next videos, you'll see two other examples. One example here, you can notice that the user has typed in, I want to find details on vendor 30,000. Now, since the user has already provided that, we don't want to ask the user this question, and I'll show you how you can elegantly forego asking them to enter the vendor number again. And in this example, notice I've actually got a link right over here so they can jump to the Business Central record from within that answer. Another way that I'll showcase in a third video is how you can use an adaptive card. So here the user says they want details on a customer, and we are going to allow them to search by either the number or the name. Or we could also have chosen another field we might allow them to search by. And because case sensitivity is important in these scenarios, we've also instructed them on how to use it and remind them that it's case sensitive and they can search a value. And when they type in a value, it will be able to find that particular customer or vendor in this case. So I think I had rugged rugged tents was one of my customers, so you can find that type of information as well. So stay tuned, come back for these videos, and if you haven't already done so, hit that like button and subscribe, and come back to watch more OnlyCopilotFans videos. This is AJ Ansari, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.